you stay in this bubble of fear, you can't move forward. You'll always find an excuse not to do the thing that you think is going to be a great idea. Don't overthink it. If you know that you've got to get off the corporate bus, or you know that you've got to look at your investments, stop putting it off, because you just need to do it. And if it doesn't quite work out, at least you gave it a go. For many, many years, we were, as I said, building these properties to put the money in the bank for a later date and do this. But we decided that investing in now is most important, because tomorrow might never happen.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show to help you unlock your full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life you really want. Let's get started. Hi, freedom fighters. Apart from your super, what do you actually invest in? Now, you know that I'm going to tell you that your super is never going to be enough to live off comfortably when you're old enough to access it, which will be a minimum of 60 from the 1st of July 2024, and is actually touted to increase to 65, 67, and then 70 and beyond as the bar just keeps getting lifted. Put simply, to survive on a combined household income of 120 grand a year, you'll need a minimum super balance of between 2.4 to 3 million when you're wanting to stop work. So how's your super balance looking now? I'll bet it's projected to be a lot less than this. In fact, the average super balance for Aussies between the ages of 60 to 64 is currently about 402,000 for men and about 318,000 for women, which means they'll be forced to live on the smell of an ollie rag or keep working until they drop. So how does this sound to you? And that's under the current super legislation that's constantly being changed because successive federal governments can see an ever-growing lolly jar full of gold that they want to get their sticky little hands on to pay for their ever-increasing expenditure excesses. So watch this space as your super continues to get eaten away through never-ending tax increases and changes. The latest example that the current federal government is trying to enforce, and is actually in draft legislation, is to impose capital gains tax on unrealised gains in your super. In other words, if your super has gone up in paper value in a financial year, then you'll be forced to pay tax on the gain even though you haven't even sold the asset, regardless of whether you've got the cash to pay for it. Now, this is really scary stuff, and heaven forbid if it gets up, because hardworking Aussies will be pulling their retirement savings out of super in droves if this actually comes to pass. So let's return to my original question. What are you actively investing in apart from your compulsory super contributions? My guess for many is nothing. If you really want to live anything like a comfortable lifestyle when you'd stop work, then you need to get invested in your financial future now. And I'm not just talking about the usual suspects of property and shares, although either of these have the potential to make a dramatic improvement sustaining your long-term lifestyle, as they have for my partner in all things Sonia and I. Because the simple fact is, I don't care what you invest in, as long as you invest in something long-term that's going to grow in value and be saleable, and doesn't involve too much risk of getting you in a position where you're going to lose it all in the meantime. You just need to start by investing in your knowledge and then taking action to invest in scarcity and rarity, in something that's in limited supply and in growing demand, and then let time and compounding returns do the heavy lifting. And this could be in any alternative asset or collectible, but more on that later. Because today we're going to continue our series on unpacking the nitty-gritty investment journeys of hardworking hands-on Aussies who've tipped the scales in their favour by getting invested in not just property, but also their passion, where their investment in property has been the great enabler to assist them to be able to pursue what they love, where they love, which is making the very best of their very own small-batched, handcrafted gin and single malt whisky from their Alchymia Distillery on the beautiful, rugged northwest coast of Tasmania at Table Cape. And this week's guests are an extra special treat for me personally, because it's an excuse to have a great conversation with a couple of active investors who've become our lifelong friends and besties, Sarah and Matt Packwood-Hollings. Now, you may not know this about Sonia and I, but you can count the number of our genuine true friends on an amputated hand, because we're very careful about who we let inside the tent. And after meeting Sarah and Matt, you probably wouldn't expect that we'd be besties because we come from very different backgrounds. But what cements our friendship is a common set of enduring values and beliefs that revolve around honesty, loyalty, and a down-to-earth, tell-it-like-it-is approach. An inability to suffer fools or bullshitters, a healthy dislike of hierarchical bureaucracy, and the rare ability to take the mickey out of ourselves and each other and to laugh at the world, which has become a bit of our favourite pastime. And I'm sure we're going to do a fair bit of that today. Now, Matt's definitely my brother from another mother who, in his self-deprecating manner, refers to himself as just a fat electrician. But underneath his deceptive image, he's a very sharp, street-smart intelligence and a very quick wit. He has an attention to detail and a practical craftsmanship that can do anything and everything to absolute perfection. Meanwhile, Sarah's intellect and awesome relationship building and marketing skills, together with her no-nonsense ability to cut through the crap and get amazing amounts of shit done, together with her unshakable loyalty and unerring support for those that she really cares about, is second to none. And together, Sarah and Matt, who we affectionately call Sarah and two T's because it's Matthew with two T's, are another shining example of the power of two in action, where the yin and yang of their complementary skills combines to create a very powerful partnership that's capable of achieving anything. And they have, and they do. And you're about to find that out. And most of all, they accept Sonia and I for who we are with all of our imperfections. So if we're ever in the trenches and up against it, we definitely want Sarah and Matt beside us because they've always got our back. So I'm really excited to get into our chat and a little bit nervous, to be honest, because I'm probably going to get called out today. So welcome and let's get invested, Sarah.
Hey, Bushy, what an intro. I think that's it now. So thank you very much for your time. That's been lovely.
I told you I was going to bore you senseless.
No, that was awesome. Great intro. Cheers, Bushy. Good to see you.
Look, I've really been looking forward to catching up, Sarah. You and your good husband are very close to us in lots of ways. We don't see anywhere near enough of you, but this is a great excuse to catch up and have a chat. But to sort of kick things off, Sarah, for those who don't know you, can you sort of tell us a bit about what you do differently and, more importantly, why you do what you do?
So Matt and I currently do what we do because after finding each other, we then found another passion and decided that time on the corporate bus had been far too long. So we decided to jump off and become distillers, which was a little bit left of field at the time, but has worked, luckily for us, amazingly. So we currently are co-owners of Alchymia Distillery on the northwest coast of Tassie, having completed 4 laps of Tassie and 14,500 kilometres. We walked into this rickety old 150-year-old shed, fell in love with it, looked at each other and thought that's worth a go. So bought a 15-acre property with an old shed and a house on it. And as they say, the rest is history for us. We found our passion and we're loving it.
Yeah, and you can see the passion all over your face and beaming from everywhere, Sarah, which we're going to dive into a little bit later. But I'd love to sort of start by getting you to give us a bit of a Reader's Digest journey of your journey so far and go back and look at what you've invested your time, energy, and money in over the years and why, and how has this then brought you back to what you're now doing and enjoying today?
Yeah, okay. So Matt and I, for our first 47 years for me and 44 years for him, spent most of our time invested in working in corporate roles, where that allowed us to purchase property and build wealth, or build riches, maybe not wealth. They're quite different. But realizing that we were very unfulfilled and looking at each other thinking, what are we going to do? We're working ourselves into the ground for what exactly? Matt and I don't have children, so we were going to end up with 4 very happy nephews in the UK when we pegged it with all this property and money in the bank. And they were going to go, oh yeah, that was our mad auntie and uncle who disappeared to Australia in 2007. So Matt and I did get on the property journey very early though, but separately. So I bought my first property at 20 and Matt purchased his first property at 22. My first property at 20 was all about giving me independence.
Yeah.
And on the advice of my dad, then getting on the property ladder early was always a great piece of advice. And I did.
Yeah.
Matt, we hadn't met at this stage. We were sort of 15 years away from meeting, but Matt had done the same his end. And yeah, time passed. We then met 15 years later, both owned our own properties, and within 3 months of meeting each other, sold both of those properties and bought a property together.
Yeah.
That was awesome. We both did really well off those first two properties that we purchased. But then the one that we bought together is where we had our first bad experience. When we decided we were going to emigrate to Australia, you have a very tight time period. Once they've said you can emigrate, you have 2 years to take that up, or you have to start the whole 2.5-year process again.
Yeah.
So we were on a timeline. The barn that we had purchased together hadn't sold. And at the last minute, we actually got an offer for the asking value. And then the week later, the 1 in 100-year flood happened on the property that we purchased. The floodwaters didn't make it to the house, but obviously it made people extremely nervous. We were actually just under a kilometre away from the river, and the river came within 100 metres of the house. So the purchasers pulled out, understandably.
Yeah.
The floodwaters retreated almost immediately, and so we were back on the market. And at this stage, we now had 3 weeks to take up our visa, or it was all off. So we got another offer that we accepted, and then the second 1 in 100-year flood happened within 3 weeks of the first one.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. It was, yeah. So, of course, the second purchasers pulled out. We had to make that decision at that stage. Do we cut our losses and sell? We actually ended up selling it for exactly what we bought it for, rather than the 250 grand over what we bought it for 3 weeks before. But we decided that, yeah, our future was in Australia. That's why we decided to emigrate. That was our next adventure. And so we cut our losses and headed for Australia anyway, leaving the house, sail to go on in the background while we were on the plane.
Yeah. Now, just jumping in there, what triggered your interest in coming down under? I'll be interested to get your thoughts on why you decided to leave all your friends and family in the UK and head to convict land.
Australians may crucify me for my answer now. So I'm really rubbish at speaking languages.
I hadn't noticed.
So when Matt and I were on honeymoon, we decided that the next part of our journey, because we eloped to get married, same as you and Sonia.
Yeah.
So we announced to our family that we were getting married next week in the Caribbean. And by the way, you're not invited, which went down really well. And so while we were on that part of our adventure, we decided that we were going to emigrate. We didn't see that the UK was where we wanted to grow old. And yeah, our whole whirlwind romance and adventure was very early on in those days. And so we decided that we were going to emigrate. Now, as I'm noted, I am rubbish at languages. So we highlighted that it had to be English speaking. So it was either going to be America, Canada, New Zealand, or Australia. But being the challenging people that we are, we looked at it and said, well, Australia's the hardest to get into. Let's try for Australia. And so we entered the process of applying for visas to emigrate to Australia. Luckily, as you mentioned in your intro, Matt is an extremely talented man. He's not just a fat electrician. And his qualifications after the 2.5 year process got us a fully open-ended visa, not sponsored by any particular state. And so that's how we decided we were coming to Australia, because the original thing was, well, if we can't get into Australia, we'll try for New Zealand, then we can try for Canada.
Knock them out by acceptance. I love it. Thank God you made it to Aussie. Thank God you made it.
I know. Oh, blimey. The paperwork involved, I probably wouldn't have applied anywhere else if we'd have been refused. I did not realise it was going to be a 2.5 year immigration process. But there you go.
Great.
So that's how we ended up in Oz.
There you go. I love that. So, sorry, I interrupted your story. So you decided to come over it anyway, and your farm property still hadn't been sold. Pick up the story from there.
Yeah, so it still hadn't sold. So I had contacted a property broker at that stage and you never want to be in a position where you're speaking to a property broker to purchase your house, because they want it at the lowest price possible. So we accepted the offer. The offer he offered us was 10 grand less than we'd paid for it. So, of course, we'd still had the stamp duty hit, etc. But, yeah, our journey had started and we'd made the decision that we were heading to Australia. So, pig-headedly, we are both very strong-willed, I'm going to call it, rather than pig-headed. We decided that was just part of our journey. We weren't meant to leave the UK with that extra 250 grand in our pocket. We were meant to leave the UK with exactly what we'd met with 3 years before, and that's what we came to Australia with in the end.
Yeah, I love it. So it's pretty much a clean slate from that perspective. Tell us about your arrival in good old South Oz, which is where Sonia and I had the pleasure to first meet you. Talk to us about what happened from there.
Yeah, so Sonia was at LJ Hooker, managing the rental division there at the time. So it was actually LJ Hooker that I'd reached out to when we were emigrating and said, look, we're coming. We have got a lump of cash, so you can take as much in a bond as you want, but we really need a house. So it was via Sonia that we found our first rental property to allow us then to settle and investigate the area a bit more. Because the one thing that I didn't mention was Matt had actually never been to Australia before we emigrated. I'd never been to South Australia. I'd done Western Australia quite extensively, but Matt had never been to Australia. So rather than purchase on day one, we had made the decision that we were going to rent for 12 months, understand what state it was we'd arrived in, investigate the area, and decide if that was where we were going to stay. SA, we chose SA purely because if Matt didn't like Australia or didn't like SA, it was positioned well for them investigating and visiting other states quite easily. Yeah. Whereas if we'd headed to WA, moving to another state would then be like moving from the UK to Europe, so another country again. So, but luckily, we met Sonia day 3, picked up the keys to our rental. Then she introduced this random guy as Bushy, and and the rest is history. We spoke to you then, and we'd already started looking. We knew quite early on, well, very quickly actually, that we'd landed in the right spot. It felt right for us, and so we started looking at pieces of land, because we knew that the only way that we would recoup any of the 250 that had already disappeared would be if we could buy a couple of pieces of land, build, and then sell on. So that's where our property journey in Australia then started. We very quickly purchased 2 blocks of land. Luckily, the one being in Wollonga, which very naively for us, we didn't realise was sort of the hippie centre of SA at the time. So we felt really lucky on that one, and built the first house there. And halfway through that build, bought another piece of land out at McLaren. and started the build process there. So yeah, and that was how we have managed to indirectly end up where we are now, doing exactly what we want to do and something that we're passionate about, jumping off that corporate bus and working in our own distillery.
I love it. I love it. Well, you've touched on some great stuff there, Sarah. I'd love for you to share. You're new in the country. You've pretty much upended your whole life to start again. You decide you've had some property experience, some good and bad. You've decided to have another crack at it. You've jumped into the new build exercise, and you've done the one at Wollonga, and then the one at McLaren, and then you did another one down at Aldinga Beach, and then a beautiful home that you built in McLaren Flat or close to it, and all beautiful parts of the world. Can you tell us about the trials and tribulations that you experienced? Well, before we do that, any hesitations or fears that you had about diving in deep? Because that's a lot of people, Australians have been here all their life, are often challenged to even contemplate the new build process because of the fears that surround all of that. Did you have any hesitations, and if so, what were they, and how did you overcome them?
So there's nothing like that in the UK. So you go to the sort of show home areas, villages, where you can look at all the different show homes. There's nothing like that at all in the UK. It just doesn't exist. So for us, it was all part of our adventure, I suppose. We sort of found this like little show home village and started walking through. And that's where the idea came. We knew from speaking to you, I think quite early on, that it's sort of a third, and a third. So if you can buy the land, spend the same amount on the build, then when you come to sell, you should make that amount profit. And for us, we were very focused on trying to rebuild the money that we'd lost on the sale of the property from the UK. And so we jumped on the back of that. We could afford to purchase and build one house. We then financed the second build, but we bought both blocks of land outright with the money that we brought from the UK.
Yeah,
we'd both found jobs quite easily at this stage, although I was going to retire when we came to Australia. That was the idea when we retired. When we actually emigrated, I was going to retire. That lasted. Matt went to work, and it lasted about 3 days. And
I was going to say, you're making me laugh, and I didn't know that was your intention, because I can't imagine you ever retiring, Sarah.
I know, and that's exactly why we've actually now got our own business, because I've now admitted that. I'd never retire. We might sort of wind the days back a little bit, but yeah, no, that was the plan when we first came to Australia. Because in the UK, I was working, all sorts of hours all over the UK. I was working probably 80 hours, 90 hours a week, earning great money, but yeah, Matt was just, you're going to burn yourself out. This isn't right. So when we got the first offer on the barn in the UK, that would have absolutely allowed us to come to ours, and for me to, have a little potter. I don't know how long that would have lasted for. Probably not for, well, it didn't. It lasted 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks, yeah, exactly.
3 weeks. And so yeah. So that's so the third, and the third, that discussion that we had with you very early on, we saw that as a pathway for us rebuilding that money in the background. But then actually we became addicted to it, I think.
as we do.
Yeah, 100%. Because Matt and I used to do, obviously we'd get the builder would do the physical build, but then Matt and I would do all the fencing, the landscaping, designing the interiors and things. And so we found that was our first, other than each other, that was our first passion that we found together, was actually property developing.
You were very good at it, I've got to say. Your ability to know what needs to be done, and Matt's ability to make it happen, and the craftsmanship that you brought to everything that I've seen you do is absolutely exceptional. So it's no surprise you've done well out of the properties that you've invested that time and energy in, no doubt.
Yeah, because I think we broke the ceiling price each time we sold a property. We broke the ceiling price for that area or that road.
Yeah.
So it does become a little bit addictive. And then, as you mentioned, our sort of piece de resistance was our property at McLaren Flat on 5 acres, surrounded by vineyards, built our forever home. Maybe not. So we thought it was our forever home when we built it, and it was a beautiful property.
Beautiful.
But then, yeah, other things in life take over, and that's when we had to really reassess what we were doing for a living. It wasn't serving us very well. Matt's health started to suffer to the point where, it suffered to the point of breakdown.
Yeah.
And that really makes you stop and think, okay, what are we doing this for? We were building a legacy and properties. We were about to look at doing another rental property.
Yeah.
And luckily, the timing was perfect for us to do our 6-week trip around the Kimberleys. Yeah. We'd been preparing and planning that trip for 12 months. And that's 6 weeks away from the pressures of day-to-day pressures of work and Matt being pulled from pillar to post.
Yeah.
We just realised that actually it was not sustainable. Yeah. And it didn't matter how much we had in the bank. If we died the next day, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's when we made the decision that we were going to do something different. And we didn't know what at that stage. We had no idea. But we knew that from what we'd been doing the 10 years previously, building properties, selling them on, building, keeping and renting out, that would allow us actually to start a whole new adventure and start with a blank canvas again.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about, you sharing with us, and I've known you for a long time now, but having the opportunity to drill into this, the courage and the resilience that both of you have embraced what would scare the hell out of most people and just gone, this is an adventure. Yeah. Just listening to your language saying an adventure, it just tells me about your mindset and the way you come together and go, right, we're going to have a crack at this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really important lessons for anyone who's watching or listening to this. Just get out there and have a crack. What's the worst thing that can happen? You might, yes, things mightn't go as well, but you can dust yourself off, learn from it, and go again. So I really appreciate you sharing that. What I'd love to drill into a little bit, if I can, Sarah, is along that pathway, what really big challenging events in your life, and not just property, I'm talking generally, have you experienced that have brought about your greatest learnings and biggest changes?
So Matt's breakdown was definitely the biggest change. That was the turning point for us to decide that something major was going to have to be rejigged, and the current path that we were on wasn't going to be the one that we were going to continue down, because we'd end up getting to the end of it and there'd only be one of us. So that was the biggest. Yeah. That was quickly followed by, we then made the decision that not only were we going to jump off the corporate bus, but I'd had several deaths in my family that were unexpected at this stage. Yeah. So we'd been away from family and friends for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we were both in a position where we said, well, both of our parents, luckily, are both still alive. All of our parents are alive. And after losing 3 people in quick succession unexpectedly, we actually said, 10 years away, they're all still alive. We actually need to spend a bit of time with them before we continue on our journey to find what it is that we're going to do as our own business.
Yeah.
So the one thing that Matt and I have always said, our mantra has always been, we would rather do something and regret doing it than sit on our deathbed saying, we wish we'd done it. So I think that may be crazy to some people, But we never want to be sat rocking in that old rocking chair going, oh, do you remember when we thought we might give that a go? And you talked me out of it. So we sometimes think that we're a bit nuts. Other people think we're sometimes inspirational. So we're probably somewhere in between.
I'd certainly defer to the inspirational and what I also admire is the importance of family to you and Matt, and to then pick yourself up and go back and spend time with the family. Not many people would make that call either, by the way. But you talk about regrets. I know we've spoken to you and Matt about this in terms of Sonia and I, and family's everything to us. And we're blessed with our mum and dad, so we've revolved our lives around spending as much time with them as we can while they're still here. Yeah. And it's important time to give back to people who've really enabled us to be able to do what we now do. Is the reality of that. And I guess the fact that you and Matt had the courage to get stuck into the property game to some degree probably helped fund your ability to take the time to go and spend with family before you then resumed your adventure back down under. Would I be right in saying that, Sarah?
Yeah. We sold at that stage when we made the decision, and it wasn't an easy decision. When we made the decision in 2017 that we were going to return to the UK for a while before finding the place to set up our own business, we sold everything. We sold all the properties that we built. We sold our forever home in McLaren. And that was where our second bite happened, because we returned to the UK with our dollars in the bank. And during the 2 weeks it took us to settle and then start getting the money transferred into UK sterling, there was a crash in the market. And so for the second time, there's a trend here somewhere. For the second time, by getting involved in going back in UK property, we got hit hugely. We lost at that stage $185,000 overnight with the crash in the exchange rate. So we had gone back with the idea of possibly looking at buying a little bit of acreage with a barn on it and maybe setting up our own distillery over there.
Okay.
But that very quickly, turned into, that's not going to happen. not with that now. So we jumped straight back into the property development again. So we then started looking for a property where we could renovate it, add value, and make back our loss yet again. Yeah. So that's when we found the old post office at Brimfield, which was 400 years old. It had had a little old lady live in it since 1936, and it had not been touched. We purchased it thinking that it was a rendered single brick property. It turned out to be a solid an oak frame with chicken wire and cow shit in between. So when we cut the back of the house out to do the extension, that was a bit of an, oh blimey, what have we done moment. And I remember Matt and I were stood on scaffolding, because Matt and I did all the cutout. We were stood on scaffolding, and the render came away, and I remember seeing the wire thinking, oh, that doesn't look good. That's definitely not brick. And then as it peeled away, these chunks of mud and cow shit fell out between the wire. I'm like, oh no. And we just looked at each other on the scaff and we went, oh, that probably wasn't, this may not have been the best thing to put every cent we've ever owned or earned into, but it all worked out fine in the end.
You've shown me the photos. It looked, the work that you guys did on it, and let's not undervalue the blood, sweat, and tears that you guys put into that place. I saw the before and after photos, and my goodness, what a transformation that you brought to it. So that's where I love the synergy between both of you, and the fact that you're both prepared to muck in and just do whatever has to be done to get it done. Really inspirational, Sarah. So tell us what the outcome of that exercise was.
So it was going really well for the first 6 months, and then we were like, oh yeah, this actually doesn't feel like home, does it? And yeah, realized that we probably shouldn't have gone back to the UK. Although, to be fair, it gave us some really good time. Matt's dad was coming and helping him on the build. I was working out of my dad's office 5 miles down the road, so that I didn't have all the noise and dust in the background. So I started working out of my dad's office a couple of days a week to bring in some extra money. And so it did exactly what it needed to do. Yeah. I.e., we spent time with our dads and our moms that we wouldn't have been able to do had we not made that decision. But we did have to break it to them 6 months in that, okay, we're not staying. So make the most of the next 12 months while we finish the post office, because, by the way, we're going back to Australia. So that was a interesting conversation. But I think they knew, to be fair. I think they knew pretty early on it was like going to we'd completely desensitized to the UK in the 10 years that we were in Australia. Yeah. We'd got this whole different lifestyle. And going back to the UK, it just didn't feel right anymore. Yeah, so as much as it will always be our birth home, it didn't feel like home, and it wasn't going to be part of our future. Yeah. But we gave it a go.
Yeah, well, yeah, again, you had a crack. I mean, that's what I love about you guys. That's right, let's have a go. And if it doesn't work, we'll do something else. So there's another big leap to end up in Tassie. So talk and opening your own distillery. So tell us that part of the story.
So when we decided that we were going to jump off the corporate bus, we knew two things. We knew that we wanted to start our own business together so that we could actually, invest more time in each other. And we knew from the property development that we could work together. Yeah. But we had no idea what it was that we were going to do. We knew that we were passionate about two or three things, one being good food, the other being good alcohol. So that's what we decided. Well, let's just have a look at things around that sort of area. So the first thing we looked at actually was a little olive farm in McLaren Vale. Yep. Then we looked at a jam company just outside Adelaide. Then we actually came down to Tassie. We used to come down to Tassie quite a lot when we lived in SA. Yeah. And we always said that we'd retire to Tassie, which is pretty funny because, let's face it, we're never going to retire. So we always said we'd retire to either Tassie or New Zealand because SA was very hot in the summer.
Yeah, it was.
So when we were looking for what it was we were going to do, part of that journey was coming down to Tassie and looking at a cherry farm and a blueberry farm. Yeah. We looked at a marron farm on the way home in Victoria. We looked at another olive farm. Then we looked at a winery and found out Matt was allergic to wine, which was quite amusing for me when he swelled up like an Alabama tick, but not very funny for him. So wineries were now off the agenda. And it was absolutely by chance that we ended up finding distilling, because I'd actually booked Matt a distillery course down here in Tassie for his birthday in 2016. Yep. And I was actually going to come down and go to the spa for the week because we were still both in corporate world. We still hadn't found what we were going to jump off to do. Yeah. And then, so I booked it for his birthday and I was coming down to go to the spa. And then the week before the course, the joining details came through and the course was for 2 people. And I was like, okay, that's not.
No spa for you, sir.
That doesn't really work for me, to be honest with you, because I really want to go to the spa. So I don't know. I spoke to his brother from another mother, Bushy, to see if he could do the course with him. He showed no interest at all. So thanks for that, Bushy. So I canned my spa and joined Matt on his birthday present on the distillery course. And I'm a great believer in fate. day one. So we've been looking now for 3 years. And day one, we were down at Captain Blythe's making the whiskey wash, which is the first part of the process when you make single malt whiskey. And we looked across the mash tun at each other, and we both had ridiculously silly grins on our faces. And we instantly know when we see that in each other that something is about to either go very well or very badly. And we knew that that was what we were going to do. And so we said, this is it. We found what we've been looking for, that we're going to become distillers. And the guy, love him, Steve Brooks, who owns Captain Blythe's, went, sort of laughed and thought, blimey, they're only on day one of the course, and apparently they're going to become distillers. Who do they think they are? So we sat in Salamanca that night and came up with the business name, bought our little black book and started writing down ideas of what we could do. And yeah, our dream was born. So, and we invested from that day forward, everything that we have done, even the bit of going back to the UK the following year, was always with the focus being on, we're going to end up with our own distillery. And that's going to be how we jump off the corporate bus. And yeah, we're here, and we've been open nearly 2 years now. And yeah, loving it.
Yeah, and I can tell. I mean, Sonia and I came down and spent some time with you for Matt's 50th, and we can see you like pigs in muck. Yeah, it's just a great place. You're doing some great stuff for some great people. It's an awesome community down there. I can tell that you're really living your ideal life, really, as a consequence of all of that hard work that you put in leading up to that. Before I sort of leap into the Alchymia story in a bit more details there, if you had reflected back on the journey so far and you were starting out again, would you invest in anything differently?
We would definitely have invested in making more whiskey when we made the decision. So after we finished the course down here in Tassie, we returned home to McLaren Vale and contacted the local distillery and announced we were going to be distillers, to which they were delighted, but we're not sure how that affects us. And then I announced that, well, you have all the equipment and we need to make some whiskey, because I always look, if we've made a decision to do something, I'm the person who's looking 10, 20 steps ahead. Yep. So I said to Matt, if we can make some whiskey now, we can then, because we had no idea where we were going to set up our distillery. Yep. That journey ended up covering both sides of the globe. But I said, if we can make some whiskey now, when we found our spot and are ready to open, we'll have some matured whiskey ready to bottle and sell, which is unheard of. You get new distilleries open and they've got their gin and their vodka, and it's a 2-year minimum wait until they can release their whiskey. Yeah. So we invested heavily to be able to make our first 200 litres of new make spirit, which we then casked and left in McLaren while we returned to the UK to have a quick look, see if we were going to set it up over there, and then come down to Tassie. So the only thing in hindsight that I would have done differently was invested more money and laid down more new make. Yeah, okay. Because when we opened just under 2 years ago, we opened with our 200 litres of new make, which was now fully matured whiskey. So we opened with 2 4.5-year-old whiskies, and they sold out 4 months ago. So I've got a gap. Yeah, I was trying to avoid a gap, but I've still got a gap until our new make spirit that we've made here becomes whiskey next March or April. So I've still ended up with a 12-month gap. So had I made more whiskey, had we made more whiskey in McLaren, but it was a huge investment at the time, because at that stage, it was still a dream. We said we were going to become distillers, but we actually had no pathway to do that, other than the fact we'd done the course, we'd fallen in love with it, and this is what we're going to do.
but what I love about that, though, is that because if any of us knew what we probably know now, we probably wouldn't have been as ready to dive in, because I think naivety, ignorance is actually a blessing. because your passion is what carries you through and gets you through the inevitable trials and tribulations that you experience as you start to uncover, holy hell, what the hell have I got myself into? And by then it's too late. You've got to make it work.
Yeah, 100%.
So I love that, but I love the strategic intent of going, okay, well, we're going to put some whiskey down now, because most people, like I say, very few would. I would have thought they'd jump in and then go, holy, we've got a massive hole in our cash flow for the next X years, and the only thing we can do is gin and vodka in the meantime. So now I love that. Now, and it is a beautiful part of the world that you're living in. So
it is.
Can you tell us about Alchymia Distillery in terms of what's different about it, how it works, and as importantly, who's it best suited to, Sarah?
So our distillery, and we believe that it's different to most in that we always said that we wanted to build an experience, not a legacy. For many, many years, we were, as I said, building these properties to put the money in the bank for a later date and do this. But we decided that investing in now is most important, because tomorrow might never happen. So we always said we were building an experience, and that's exactly what we've done. So this is our main route to market. We don't have any online route. Yep. We're not in any major bottle-os. That's not our bag. That's not our market. Yep. Our market is, we found an amazing 150-year-old shed, which yet again we've renovated. Matt's the skilled one. I'm just the labourer in all of this.
You don't undermine your part in that either, Sarah. You're a dynamic combo when it comes to all of that.
So we've renovated this 150-year-old shed, and we make single malt whiskey from scratch, from opening the barley bag, sifting through it by hand, picking out the bird poo and the bits of stick, and we then grist, we mash in, which we love it when we do our mash. That's where our sort of hello moment, oh, this is what we're going to do, started. So we love mashing in. So we mash in, ferment, distill, everything here on site. Our stills are named, our big 500-litre copper pot still is named after my Nan Joyce, who was one of the people that we lost and drove us to go back to the UK to spend more time with our parents. And our column still is named after Matt's Nan, who was a major influence in his life. So our distillery is our little home in there. We are surrounded by things that we love, and the experiences that we offer are unique, because that little black book that we bought on day one of the course that we started writing our ideas down, we wrote in that for 4 years before opening this place. And every time we had one, oh, imagine if we did that. Oh, nobody else did. Oh, imagine if we did that. So we've got our halo experiences for true with whiskey enthusiasts. We actually invite them to come and physically make their own whiskey with us. So you can buy a private cask from any distillery. Some of them will say, oh, we'll invite you to come and fill it. So you get to fill your cask with the new make, and then they let you know when they think it's ready, or you can ring occasionally if you want to and make an appointment to go and taste it. Whereas Matt and I, over those 4 years, designed this whole halo experience, which is our Alchemist Academy private cask experience, where whiskey enthusiasts, you're going to own your own cask of whiskey, but how about coming and getting involved and physically making it with us? And our youngest private cask owner is 22, and our oldest is 82, and they all love it. It's amazing.
I love it.
And for us, we have met some great people. We've also inspired 2 other people to jump off the corporate bus. And as we did in McLaren Vale, they are coming down again in January next year to make their second 100 litres of new make. So they made one lot with us last January. So we've actually inspired some others to, do the same.
Well, I having been down there and again, see the transformation of the old pig shed into what it is now, a work of art, and the distillery itself are just, I know enough to be dangerous, as you know, Sarah. when it comes to this stuff. But looking at the craftsmanship it is an absolute work of art. Everything you've done in that place. So in a fantastic part of the world, wrapped in nature, views of the sea, and what you've done with the exercise and the whiskey itself. I mean, you're slowly but surely educating me on what makes or breaks a great whiskey. So I want to segue right there, because there is an art form to this as well. Can you share with us what the biggest mistakes that you see people make when they go to buy whiskey, Sarah?
I don't see anybody making a mistake when they buy whiskey. Okay. Because everybody's palate, the one thing you do learn really quickly in this industry, everybody's palate is completely different. So, and the important thing is whatever whiskey it is you choose, as long as you enjoy drinking it, it doesn't matter if it's a $3,000 bottle or a $30 bottle. If you're enjoying it, then that's the main thing. Yeah. For us, we love the fact that our whiskey, we touch, taste, and smell it at every stage from start to finish, from hand sorting the barley to, corralling the mash to make sure that we get all the sugars out. And then when it comes to doing our final distillation, we have to do that when we're not open to the public, because we're constantly tasting, touching, and smelling. And we're all about quality for us. One of our phrases is, great spirit is made by hand, not on a spreadsheet. So we don't cut by numbers. We don't cut by percentages or volume. We cut by taste, smell, and touch. If it smells right, tastes right, and feels right, that's it. We're cutting there. That's our hearts. That's what's going to go into a cask. And then for us, since jumping off one of the things that we didn't envisage as being an impact when we jumped off the corporate bus is you become very aware of how throwaway you can become when you're not having to think about it. And Matt and I have been very, very, we've done this historically, and now I just feel so ashamed that we did that. That one's dirty, get me a new one. Whereas now, that one's dirty, let's call it patina and put it on the wall. You know what I mean? Let's do something else with it. Let's reuse it or recycle it in some other way. Yeah. So sustainability for us here is first and foremost. So when we make our new make spirit, none of the waste leaves site. We use every bit of it. None of it goes to waste. So the grain, we end up with 300 kilos of spent grain every time we mash in to make our single malt whiskey. That goes to the local cattle.
Yeah, nice.
50 meters away, that gets eaten. When you're doing your distillation, your fours, which are your first part of the distillation to come off, they're all the high volatiles, very dangerous. That's where the term blind drunk comes from. If you don't cut those off, it literally can send you blind. So all of those fours, all those high volatiles, we use those as weed killer around the property because they literally kill a weed dead. Then our hearts cut, which is the best part of the spirit. We corral and look after that beautifully and put that in hand-selected casks, which again we select by smell and very carefully. The feints are the next part, and the tails. That's what we turn into our vodka, because lots of distilleries, and it's entirely up. This isn't a criticism of how they do it, but lots of distilleries will put the feints back into their next distillation. For us, because we're only ever going to be single cask release, we're not interested in becoming blenders. Yeah. We don't want to put those feints into our next distillation. So that's where our combination still comes in. Our feints, we start sending them up a 9-plate column, which purifies the alcohol as it goes. By the time it gets to plate 9, it's 97%. Hey, presto, we've got our vodka product. We don't put it in a bottle at 97. Don't be concerned. But to call it vodka, it's got to come off your still at over 95%. Wow. So our feints we turn into vodka. And then our lees, we're left with about 50 litres, and we use that as fertiliser on the veggie patch, which is where we grow our botanicals for our gin. So for us, it's a full, sustainability is really important for us.
Yeah, I love that. And again, it comes down to that sort of intimate experience that you're talking about with it, rather than this bulk volume exercise. And I have to tell you this, but you've turned me into a bit of a whiskey snob since I've been spending time with you guys, because I used to defer to the old blended whiskies that you could get off the shelf, the Johnny Walkers and all the rest of it. And ever since you've educated me on the blessings of single malt, like I can't go near a blended whiskey anymore. It's just not even in the equation as far as that goes. So
love it.
Yeah, really enjoyed that. What I want to do now, Sarah, before I get you to share how people can reach out and start to enjoy that hands-on experience themselves with something that's really unique in a unique location, and a great way to take some time out and reflect on life as we very seldomly make that time to have a bit of a think about what our life's doing and where we're heading. I want to now shift into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush fast four, Sarah, which is where I give you a blindfold and a cigarette. And I ask you four very quick questions that people always want to sort of glean your words of wisdom on. So the first one of those is, what's your favourite quote and why?
Carpe diem. Seize the day. There may not be a tomorrow. So, make the most of it.
Yeah, that's everything that you and 2Ts have done is a big evidence of exactly that. On the literary front, Sarah, what's the top book that you'd recommend we read, and why?
Fear Bubble, Ant Middleton. So that is about embracing the fear and making it work for you, using that to actually give you extra strength. So Fear Bubble is a great read. Step into the fear. Don't try, and if you stay in this bubble of fear, you can't move forward. You'll always find an excuse not to do the thing that you think is going to be a great idea. So Fear Bubble for me by Ant Middleton, which is a bit left of field, SAS, but great read.
Yeah, I haven't read that one, so that's going to go straight on the Kindle list. So thanks.
Yeah, definitely do.
Added to my list on that one. Back in the investment arena for a second, what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received?
The best piece of investment advice, I think I would have to put down to my dad. Buying that first property at 21 and taking that risk. It was worth living on porridge for 6 months because I couldn't afford the mortgage. It paid off in the end. The worst piece of investment advice? See, I used to work as a financial planner, so I'm very pig-headed. I don't usually listen to many people. I don't think we've never invested badly.
No.
We've invested and been bitten by things out of our control. But I don't think I might have heard some bad advice, but we've never taken it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We were just like nod and walk away and go, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Tosser. Yeah. Exactly.
So no, I don't think we've had any bad advice, but buying a property was definitely the best piece of advice.
Yeah, no, I love that. And to round this out, do you have a sort of a personal happy habit or daily discipline that you employ that's contributed most to your success today?
So I think headspace is paramount. So every morning I do 20 minutes of Pilates and yoga, and that, just sets me up well. Matt has a smoke and 2 coffees. Put that there. So no, Matt has a smoke and 2 coffees while I'm doing 20 minutes of Pilates. But again, for him, that's his, what have I got to get done today? We just do it very differently. We are very different. But when we come together, we are the A-team, to be fair.
Absolutely. Yin and yang is a powerful combination there, Sarah. Is there any question that I haven't asked you that you wish I had? And if so, what would you your response have been?
Oh, you've done a pretty good grilling, Bushy, to be fair. When's our first Tassie whiskey going to be released? Would have been a good question.
Yeah, when is that?
Yeah, so that's going to be, we will know more after this Wednesday, because Matt and I are going to do our second tasting of our first 10 casks. But we are hoping March, April next year, we will be releasing our first handcrafted small batch Tassie whiskey that we've made here at Alchymia Distillery. So that's very exciting.
Very exciting. And I'll be lining up for a few bottles of that. Sort of put a big bow around our chat today then, Sarah. What would be your key takeaways and initial actions for those listening in?
Don't overthink it. If you know that you've got to get off the corporate bus, or you know that you've got to look at your investments, stop putting it off, because you just need to do it. And if it doesn't quite work out, at least you gave it a go. And that won't work for everybody. So it might not be anything dramatic. It might just be the smallest thing. Smallest habit you think, I need to stop doing that, or I need to start doing that. Yeah, just stop thinking about it and give it a go. Yeah,
dead right. Love that. For those that have really resonated with your message today, Sarah, how can they find out more and get more involved with you?
They can, so our website's www.alchymia distillery.com, or happy for people to give me a call direct. My mobile is 0447 619 291. If I am in the tasting room, it will go to voicemail. But if anybody's got any questions or interested in understanding more about us, then just reach out.
I love it. Look, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us. Any excuse is a good excuse for me to chat to you, Sarah. We're going to put your contact details in the show notes for anyone who wants to jump in to make it easy for them, so we can do that. But again, I want you to give a massive bear hug to my brother from another mother that's probably hiding and lurking in the background somewhere. I know how gun shy he is of jumping on the microphone, just like my good wife, Sonia. But again, really want to thank you for taking the time. We look forward to getting down there to see you before too much longer, and want to make sure we keep the conversation going. And thanks, Bushy. Thank you for inviting me on. Been great. Enjoyed it. Good to catch up, mate. Thanks, Sarah. Take care. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. And don't leave yet until you've taken the next step towards living by design by getting my award-winning book, Get Invested, absolutely free when you sign up at knowhowproperty.com.au or bushymartin.com.au. And finally, make sure you subscribe to Property Hub to get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's leading property show for red-hot property investing news and insights, direct from industry leaders and influencers. Remember to always get invested in your knowledge, and I look forward to seeing you next time.